Oh, Snuggle Puppy!
Snuggle Puppy, yay!
Welcome back to Definitely Not Definitive. I'm Ken.
And I'm Bethany.
And this is Bucky. He's got a Snuggle Puppy. He brought me a Snuggle Puppy.
Yes.
And he's ready for some Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so we're doing some Pokemon. And this is a little bit of a detour from the Every Type Explained. So we're going to get to Dragon type. But before we do that, we're going to do the Dragon type Pokemon Masters of Mana, or Mana. So just a little bit more information on dragons and the Dragon type of Pokemon before we get into Every Type Explained.
Got it.
Oh, we got the hair?
Yeah, there's a puppy dog hair.
Those are brutal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dragons. No other mythical beast is quite as prevalent across human history and varying cultures as the dragon. But what makes a dragon? And more specifically, why is dragon a type in Pokemon? I mean, think about it. It's weird. I mean, Pokemon has so many dragons. Like, there's Altaria. It's a dragon. This month is Dragon Month, an entire month filled with Dragon-type Pokemon videos. And next month it's Fairy Month. Oh, fairies, the little dastardly villains to dragons, like Altaria. But what question is possibly better to ask at the start of our special month than, why is Dragon even a type? And what does it take to be Dragon type? Normally I save such questions for the Every X-Type Pokemon Explained Not Type series. But Dragon and Fairy are so unique and deep that we need to separate that into its own video, which is what this is. Especially since there is so much confusion when it comes to what makes a Dragon-type Pokemon. So, that's what we're going to figure out today on Noggin. Base facts first. The Dragon type has been in Pokemon since the beginning, though with only one Pokemon line, Dragonite and Fam, meaning that at the time, the developers really wanted Dragon to be a rare type. Yeah. But why? Also, the Dragon type has many quirks and characteristics that makes it out to be a rather interesting type, but the main draw for this typing, of course, is the real world's mythos. Thankfully, Game Freak didn't just make up all the dragon information, because dragons are a big idea. I mean, what even are dragons, honestly? Not Pokemon dragons. We got a list of those. I'm talking real-world dragons.
Real
what are
world?
They? Dragons vary. And when I say vary, I mean they vary a lot. Hey, grammar. However, almost every civilization has something like a dragon found within its myths and legends. And because of that, unfortunately, there isn't one cohesive idea of a dragon. However, there are some theories as to why almost every human culture has a dragon. And that theory points to our intrinsic fear of snakes, birds of prey, and big cats, all of which have common attributes across dragons. However, every culture seems to add or remove some non-key features, which brings up the question of, why do dragons even exist?
They're not cute.
And that's somewhat simple. The same reasons most fairy tales or myths exist, to teach a lesson. Scary stories of the dark forest are a wonderful deterrent for children, essentially scaring them away from wandering off and getting lost. Dragons, in most myths, lived in dangerous areas like caves, volcanoes, vast deserts, and roaring oceans. Dangerous places for a child to explore.
I recognize that dragon. I'm trying to think of what he was from.
Dragons that don't live in such places were the nice dragons, used as a story device to teach a life lesson that isn't easily learned, such as the Dragon's Gate in Eastern legend, where if a carp works hard enough, it could be rewarded and turned into a dragon, teaching kids that hard work pays off in the long run. And this is where a huge difference in dragons between cultures comes up. How different cultures used them in stories. And even if you only split the world in two, East and West, the differences in dragons is astounding. For the sake of simplicity, let's just look at Far Eastern and European dragons for now. Eastern dragons are rather interesting in their existence. Where other cultures used them to keep children safe, these tales are normally used to teach wisdom.
Scared.
Eastern dragons are commonly benevolent, or nice, rarely causing destruction, besides when people really deserved it. But in European mythos, dragons, specifically classic medieval hodgepodge of Greek and Roman dragons, were normally depicted as large quadrupedal lizards with wings, many of which could breathe fire. But this fire was distinct. It wasn't normal fire, it was advanced fire. Dragon's fire. That's right, and this is the first distinction in Pokemon that we found. Way back in Gen 1, there was only one dragon move, and it sucked. It's Dragon Rage, which for several generations just used a slightly modified flamethrower sprite animation. It was that lame, and basically worthless late game too, or competitively. Ugh. But that's not the point. Yet. Back to Eastern versus Western dragons. If Pokemon based its dragon type off of just one of these, then half of the dragons that we see in Pokemon would be cut from the dragon roster. So Pokemon's dragon type mustn't be just one type of dragon. It must definitely pull from all cultures. But by not clearly having a defined origin causes mixed feelings? I feel like Pokemon's idea of dragon is both interesting and tame at the same time then. You see, you could just say it's all a mix-mash of all dragons in media. However, there are plenty of almost original ideas to be found, and it's these ideas that truly make Pokemon dragon type. We all know that looks don't make the dragon in Pokemon. Just look at Alolan Exeggutor or Altaria, and then look at Charizard and Gyarados, two opposing issues with the dragon type showcased right here, folks. Plus, looking at the more recent dragon Pokemon, we seem to have classical dragons and new age dragons merging into this odd conglomerate of wacky monsters. I mean, just look at Hexorus. It's just a dinosaur with an axe face. That's like a Batman villain. Axe face. Yet it's dragon type exclusively. Though, looks are rather important. Pokemon is a highly accessible game meant to be played at any age. So long as you can read, of course. This means that Pokemon types need to be easily identified by their looks, and across all cultures. There are a few exceptions to this rule though, like Goomy, it's just a cute little slug, but these are more or less outliers or have very specific reasons for being dragon type despite not looking like a dragon. Like Vibrava, it's a dragonfly. A pun. Not a true representation of a dragon. Pokemon are magical creatures for sure, but why are these creatures stronger? Because statistically, dragon-type Pokemon normally have higher stats than the other types, along with their rather impressive advantages in resistances and weaknesses. And even those have reasons as to why they exist. Dragon has always been seen as one of the more magical types. I mean, dragons are mythical, that's like half magic. Well, not like in Pokemon mythical, I mean like fairy tales, non-real, or real-world magic, which is fake. Maybe. You know, like Loch Ness and the Quetzalcoatlus and dragons in our world. You know, they're the square root of -1. They're imaginary. But let's get back on track. I mean, the only reason dragon is weak to dragon is because that essentially says that they are so strong they can only really be hurt by other dragons. And since dragons are reptiles, most often associated with things like fire, ice, or cold is also a very effective weapon against them. And fairy is complicated. In most mythos, dragons were actually immune to magic because they are magic incarnate. Especially European dragons, it's almost stated directly. But in fairy tales and some other myths, it was said that dragons were weak to magic or could only be harmed with enchanted magical weapons, often blessed by a fey creature. And as for the reason steel resists dragon, well, it's a stretch, but in most fairy tales, a knight in shining armor would slay the dragon, steel armor being the only way they had a chance. Dragon then resists grass, water, fire, and electric, conveniently the 4 base elements, as remember, in most fantasy, lightning magic is associated with the element of air. And these resistances then all relate to how dragons were immune to the forces of nature, the elemental magics. Plus, in the case of Pokemon, this almost helps instill the idea that dragons are strong, as those are the 4 starters types. So it seems then that dragons really do pull from their mythological roots, masters over the elements and masters of magic. And another huge thing that dragons were known for across all cultures was their ability to manipulate that magic. And this is where I'm just gonna say it, no more beating around the bush. Dragon type is essentially all about raw, arcane energy. In a way, you could explain it as an arcane type or a sorcery type. That is what makes a dragon Pokemon a dragon Pokemon. Its ability to control this arcane power. Natively, that is. This is also why other Pokemon can learn Dragon-type moves despite not being dragons at all. They are just using a bit of that arcane magic, rather than sprouting a new dragon limb to use Dragon Claw with. Yeah! Dragons are very mystical and magical by default, and have the natural ability to wield such arcane power. However, they don't have the sort of refinement that you would assume magic has. Now, I know this may be a hard concept to grasp, let alone explain, so I've enlisted the help of D&D terminology. Basically, we're looking at the difference between mages and sorcerers, or wisdom charisma casting versus intelligence casting. Dragons know how to manipulate the flow of mana, the arcane energy that's everywhere in the universe, the energy that is present in all life. In terms of Pokemon, you could say that it's the infinity energy that surrounds everything. Where AZ used a machine to manipulate the energy, dragons are able to use their primal control of magic to affect the energy into useful abilities, such as Dragon's Fire. Relating it back to D&D, because it's pretty easy to explain that way, if you were to say that dragons are a sorcerer, you'd be correct. Basically, they have either knowledge or innate magical blood power pumping through them. At least of what I understand of common D&D magic, wizards practice learned magic. They study for years to learn how to manipulate and weave the mana and become masters of it. Sorcerers
Wizards are nerds.
practice innate magic. They are gifted with an ability to manipulate the weave of mana and sculpt their interactions with it. Both things dragons are known for. However, their magic, or their use of infinity energy, is much more of a raw power, almost willing the magic to do the work by the sheer power or knowledge of manipulation. This is very different from other magics, such as wisdom or charisma-based magic, wherein they manipulate higher powers to help them, or are channeling the power of gods to assist them with their magic. Or
I thought he always
the
uses
special
Simpsons
areas
God.
in the
As
world of
God.
energy that enjoys being turned into fireballs or plant growth. They work with nature's own magic, flowing it along, just helping it do what it wants much quicker. But dragon magic is much more unnatural and
Dragon have a big
controlled,
chain?
basically forcing the flow
Necklace?
of energy to fit into their
Flav
design.
style.
This is why in D&D, Magic Missile is much less of a natural shape for arcane energy to be in, because its design is not by nature, but by the caster. You know that annoying thing where something is super interesting so the media start to pick up on it and then the general populace accepts it as fact? Unfortunately, that's how magic is portrayed in today's media. It's all fictitious, but one set of fiction is almost the base of all other fiction, sort of like how just all fantasy movies and TV shows are just Lord of the Rings with a twist these days. Game of Thrones is just spicy Lord of the Rings. This is why I'm using D&D as an easy explanation. After all, its methodology is commonly accepted as the way fantasy magic works. But magic isn't the same in every universe, so perhaps you think this is totally wrong. This is where Pokemon comes into play. Let me explain a little bit. Infinity energy is a term coined by the Devon Corporation, though I don't think they invented it like they say they did. They just definitely learned how to harness it. Basically, it's the power of life, or spirit, magic, or mana, whatever you want to call it. But in Pokemon, it's called infinity energy, or maybe aura. And dragons, heck, most Pokemon can harness this power to use their abilities, but that's a topic for another video. Instead, let's look at just dragons here. Dragons are an ancient Pokemon type. Much like rock and water, the type has existed for millions of years. In fact, that's why there are quite a few dinosaur Pokemon that have the dragon typing. Plus, almost all of the lizard-like Fossilmon can learn plenty of dragon-type moves. Dragon is old, and it commands old magic. Magic as old as time, essentially. I mean, Roar of Time is a dragon-type attack. Come on. To figure out what I mean, it's sort of like in evolution. There's always things that are better at something than you. Rock types were good at using the earth. Water, well, they were fish. But dragons, they were able to use this natural field of energy, infinity energy, mana. This is what let them survive. And of course, it being life magic, it's rather strong, which is why their stats are very good, but it's hard to master, and as such, there are very few dragon types. Fun fact that sort of helps my point. Dragon types only evolve through leveling up. The most natural and ancient way of Pokemon evolution. This could be because they are channeling infinity energy regularly with their dragon powers, whereas some Pokemon need special stones filled with power to evolve, or love from their trainer, or to be traded.
They'd love to evolve.
Dragons also have, on average, much slower XP growth compared to other non-legendary Pokemon, meaning it takes longer for them to level up and evolve. Again, ancient ways. It takes much more experience to advance their power of this arcane force. Plus, there's the fun fact that more Mega Pokemon gain Dragon as a type from Mega Evolving. The keystones used in Mega Evolving are crystallized infinity energy, Pokemon Souls, which relates it again to strengthening the bond between Dragon and infinity energy. It's this usage of infinity energy or mana that grants a Dragon type its true power. Sure, other Pokemon can use this energy, but dragons get stabbed with it. Hence why they are Dragon type. They are masters of mana, arcane adept, incarnations of infinity, super sorcerers, dragons. All synonyms in a way, but what do you think? Are dragons masters of magic, or are they just big lizards that are neato and rare and they can breathe colorful fire? Do you think I'm off my rocker, or is this something that dragon type is? It's arcane magic type nonsense. Leave me a comment about your thoughts on what dragon is, and as always, never, ever stop using your noggin. And check out these t-shirts. Boom, ba-boom, boom. Super cool. Get them, pre-order. Yeah, it's Dragon Month, Fairy Month. It's exciting.
I like that video. Like, I mean, it was interesting that he was on camera for so much of that. I mean, so because so many of the videos we've seen, he's normally just a voiceover. So wondering why he did it a little bit differently here. Because I'm looking at the how when this was released, and it wasn't released too long after the other videos have been come out. So yeah, and then I think he's right as far as dragons not obviously knowing much about Pokemon at all. That's why we're watching these videos. You know, it's easy to be swayed by what he's saying there, but what he's saying made sense even with my limited knowledge of Pokemon and just my knowledge of just like dragons sort of like in general and other fiction.
Yeah, I like the sort of simplification and kind of dumbing it down that he did for us in terms of like the difference between like the sorcerers and the wizards. And then kind of thinking of dragons, you know, as he compares them to sorcerers, it's like, I mean, they're fictitious. None of us have facts and concrete evidence as to what really is true on this because it's fiction, but that felt right. Yeah. To say that they were more like sorcerers. They just have like this raw power that they are able to control. Obviously, I don't think that dragons are like going to school and studying number books every day for their magic. So it felt true. And I was like, okay, I can kind of wrap my head around that.
Well, there we go. There's your $1 million book idea. Dragons going to like dragons, Harry Potter style.
Okay.
So dragons going to school and like learning magic and different things and like yeah. So you should write that.
Copyrighted. My $1 million book idea. This has me excited to check out the dragons. I loved how he kind of broke it down into East versus West. I grew up with like European fairy tales, so like my basis for dragons is generally in like, ooh, they're the big scary ones, and like the knights fight dragons and all that jazz. Yeah. So it was very interesting to hear about the sort of Eastern perception of dragons being things that impart knowledge and like will teach more complicated ideas to kids, and that they're well-meaning and good unless like you're really bad, and then So I liked the distinction between the two, and I also love the fact that he kind of looked at this and was like, almost every culture around the world has some kind of version of a dragon. That too it's just fascinating. I think, when you can find those similarities throughout all different cultures.
Mhm.
I think of it often happening with like religion too, and you just find that people gravitated towards a concept that seems to have permeated humanity.
I agree. Yeah, that was the part that I found interesting as well, was the East versus the West, because like I didn't know. We talked about before, just our knowledge on Eastern culture and mythology and everything like that is very much lacking. And so it's one of the reasons we want to take a trip to Japan at some point. That was like that was gonna be our next big trip, but then it just got postponed for a variety of different reasons. But hoping to get to it in the not too distant future.
It's on the bucket list.
Yeah, it is for sure on the bucket list. I had no idea that the coconut tree, whatever, was gonna be a dragon as well.
I
It
know.
does not look like a dragon, so I'm excited to hear about why it is a dragon.
Yeah, or if it's one of those that should not be a dragon type.
Ooh, exactly. Yep. Let us know what you thought about this down below in the comments, and if you agree with Lockstin about his reasoning for what dragons are, and if they are magical mystery creatures, or yeah. Thanks so much for watching our reaction for Lockstin and Noggin's Dragon-type Pokemon, Masters of Mana, but just keep in mind
That our reaction is definitely not definitive.